Before we begin, this story withholds all real names, exact locations, and identifying details. The babysitter in this story will not be named, the family will not be named, and the town where this happened will remain unknown. Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel. If you enjoy dark, unsettling horror stories like this, don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the channel to support me, and turn on notifications so you don't miss the next story. Now, imagine being hired to babysit in a quiet suburban house, only to be handed a list of rules that ends with this: if their mother comes home after 1 a.m., do not let her in. And somehow, that wasn't even the worst rule. Let's get into the story. I was 21 the night it happened, old enough to laugh off creepy stories, old enough to think I was smarter than fear, and definitely old enough to believe that babysitting in a rich suburban neighborhood was going to be the easiest money I'd make all month. At that point, I had done a lot of babysitting jobs: weekend nights, late dinners, anniversaries, parents who wanted a few hours to themselves. Some kids were nightmares, some were sweet, most were forgettable. This job should have been forgettable too. That was what I thought when I turned into the neighborhood. It was one of those quiet developments where every house looked too perfect to live in. Trimmed lawns, clean sidewalks, warm porch lights, big windows, no loud music, no barking dogs, no neighbors standing around talking. Even before it got fully dark, the whole street felt muted, like the neighborhood had already gone to sleep. The house was near the end of a cul-de-sac, 2 stories, white siding, dark shutters, expensive-looking landscaping, the kind of home that makes you expect well-behaved children and overpriced kitchen appliances. I remember standing at the front door thinking, this is easy. A few hours, 2 kids, a quiet house. Then I'd go home with cash in my pocket. The father opened the door, tall, tired, polite. The mother stood farther back in the hallway. She was beautiful in a way that felt a little too composed. Perfect hair, perfect posture, perfect smile, except the smile never quite reached her eyes. Both of them thanked me for coming. Both of them spoke normally, but both of them also seemed distracted, not rushed, not panicked, just very aware of the clock. That was the first thing I noticed. The second was how quickly they wanted me inside. The house smelled clean and expensive, warm lamps, polished wood, something faintly floral in the air. The living room looked staged, not fake exactly, just too neat. There were framed family photos, but not many. That felt strange later. At the time, I barely registered it. The father gave me a quick tour. Kitchen, living room, bathroom downstairs, stairs, kids' rooms upstairs, back door, snack cabinet, extra blankets, emergency flashlight, the usual things. Then he stopped at the bottom of the staircase. Only for a second, but it was the kind of second that makes you notice the silence around it. The mother stepped forward and handed me a folded sheet of paper. "Please read this after we leave," she said. I smiled because I thought I already knew what it was. Bedtimes, no sugar, no scary movies, no phones after a certain hour, something like that. So I said, "Sure." Neither of them smiled back. That was the first moment I felt something shift. Not fear, not yet. Just a tiny sense that I had stepped into a room where a conversation had already started before I arrived. The father called the children down to say goodbye. A girl around 9 came first, then a boy who looked 6, maybe 7. Both were already in pajamas. Both were polite. Both were much quieter than children usually are when a babysitter shows up. Not shy, not sulky, just quiet in a deliberate way. The boy looked at the folded paper in my hand, then looked at me, then asked, very casually, "Did they tell you about the rules yet?" The mother answered too quickly, "Go say goodbye." The children hugged their parents. The father grabbed his coat. The mother took her purse. Then, just before leaving, she turned back and said, "If anything feels wrong, trust the paper." Then they left. The front door closed. Their car pulled away. And suddenly, I was alone in that big, immaculate house with 2 children and a folded sheet of paper I no longer wanted to open. For the next 10 minutes, everything still felt normal enough to calm me down. The kids finished a movie. The girl asked for water. The boy wanted another blanket. I brought both. They said thank you. The TV played softly in the background. For a little while, I even felt silly for being unsettled. Maybe the parents were just intense. Maybe the paper was nothing. Maybe the weirdness was all in my head. At 9:20, I opened it. There were only 6 rules. That made it worse. No introduction, no names, no explanation. Just 6 lines written neatly in black ink. 1. After the children are asleep, do not go into the upstairs hallway bathroom. 2. If you hear either child speaking from behind a closed bedroom door after you have already checked on them, do not answer immediately. Wait until the voice speaks a second time. 3. Do not open the back curtains after 10 p.m. 4. If the baby monitor turns on by itself, mute it. Do not turn it off. 5. If someone knocks at the front door after 1 a.m., do not open it. 6. If their mother comes home after 1 a.m., do not let her in. I read the last rule twice, then a third time. Then I looked toward the front door, like someone was going to walk back in and laugh. Nobody did. I looked up at the children. They were both watching me. The girl spoke first. "You should follow them." I forced a laugh. "I'm sure I will." She didn't laugh. Then she said, "The last babysitter didn't." That sentence slid under my skin in a way I can still feel. I tried to keep my voice light. "What happened?" The little boy pulled the blanket up to his chin and said, in the calmest tone imaginable, "She cried in the kitchen for a long time." No one explained that. No one added anything. The girl looked away. The boy looked back at the TV, and the moment was over. By 10 o'clock, both kids were upstairs brushing their teeth and getting into bed. I kept telling myself the same thing. Kids repeat adult nonsense. Kids overhear things. Kids say creepy stuff by accident. That was what I held on to. I tucked the boy in first. He asked me to leave the door cracked. Then, right before I stepped away, he grabbed my wrist and whispered, "If you hear Mum outside, don't look through the peephole for too long." I stared at him. He let go immediately, rolled over, and acted like he hadn't said anything at all. The girl was already in bed with a book when I checked on her. I asked if she needed anything. She shook her head. Then, as I reached the door, she said, "If the monitor comes on, don't listen too closely." I turned back. What does that mean? But she pulled the blanket higher and closed her eyes. That left me alone in the upstairs hallway. At one end were the children's rooms. At the other, the hallway bathroom. The bathroom from Rule 1. It looked completely normal. White door, brass handle, soft yellow light glowing beneath it. I stood there staring at it for a few seconds, then told myself I was being ridiculous and went back downstairs. I made tea. I sat on the couch. I put on some quiet late-night show I didn't actually watch. The folded paper sat on the coffee table in front of me the whole time. At 10:37, the baby monitor turned on by itself. There was no baby in that house. I want to make that clear. There was no baby, just the two children upstairs. So when the monitor on the end table suddenly lit up with pale green static, I went completely still. Rule 4. If the baby monitor turns on by itself, mute it. Do not turn it off. At first there was only static, then breathing, slow, wet, too close to the microphone. Not baby breathing, adult breathing. I leaned over and hit mute so hard I nearly knocked the monitor onto the carpet. The sound cut out instantly. The screen stayed on. Static flickering, a dead little green light glowing in the dark. I did not turn it off, mostly because I suddenly didn't want to touch it again. I looked toward the stairs. Nothing moved. No footsteps. No child calling out. Just silence. Eventually I told myself it was interference, a defective old device, something explainable. The house let me believe that for just long enough. A little after 11, I heard movement upstairs. A footstep, then another, then stillness. I stood up and listened. Nothing else. I went upstairs, slowly. At the top of the stairs, the hall was dim and quiet. Both bedroom doors were closed. The bathroom door at the far end of the hall was shut. I checked the boy's room first. He was in bed, apparently asleep. Then the girls, also in bed, also apparently asleep. I stepped back into the hallway and heard a soft voice from behind the boy's closed door. "Can you come here?" My whole body went cold. Rule 2. If you hear either child speaking from behind a closed bedroom door after you have already checked on them, do not answer immediately. Wait until the voice speaks a second time. So I waited. Every second felt louder than the last. Then the voice came again. Softer this time. Closer. "Please." It sounded exactly like the boy. Exactly. I opened the door. He was in bed where I'd left him, eyes closed, blanket up. No one else in the room. I checked under the bed, opened the closet, looked behind the curtains. Nothing. Then a voice spoke behind me. Not from the bed, from the hallway. "Wrong room." I spun around so fast I hit the dresser. The girl was standing in the doorway, blanket wrapped around her shoulders. I hadn't heard her door open, hadn't heard her feet. She looked past me toward her brother's bed and said quietly, "It does that when you answer too fast." I stared at her. "What does?" She didn't answer. She just turned her head and looked down the hall toward the bathroom. I followed her eyes. The light under the bathroom door went out. Not flickered, not dimmed, just vanished. The girl took one step backward. "Don't go in there," she whispered. Then she went back into her room and shut the door. I stood there alone, listening to the silence. Then I went downstairs faster than I wanted to admit. That was when I should have called the parents. I know that. But embarrassment is a powerful thing. Fear, too. Put them together and sometimes you make the dumbest possible decision. I waited. Midnight came, then 12:17, then 12:41. Nothing happened. No footsteps, no monitor, no voices. The quiet almost settled me again. That was what the house was best at, making you feel foolish right before it got worse. At 12:58, there were 3 soft knocks at the front door. Not loud, not frantic, patient. I looked straight at the folded paper. Rule 5. If someone knocks at the front door after 1 a.m., do not open it. I checked the time. 12:58. For one stupid second, I thought maybe that meant I still had a choice. Then came a 4th knock, softer than the first 3. That somehow felt much worse. I stood up but didn't go near the door. The knocking stopped. Then, upstairs, the little boy cried out in his sleep. Just once. A small sound, then silence again. I walked to the entryway, not to open the door, just to listen. That was when I noticed something strange. There should have been a clearer shadow through the frosted side panel. There wasn't. I knew someone was on the porch. I could feel it, but the shape outside didn't seem to sit right against the glass. Then a woman's voice came through the door, soft, calm. "It's me." I froze. It sounded exactly like the mother. Not similar, not close, exactly. "Open the door." I looked at my phone again. 1:03 a.m. Rule 6. If their mother comes home after 1 a.m., do not let her in. My mouth went dry. There had to be an explanation. Maybe she forgot her keys. Maybe the event ended early. Maybe the rule meant if someone claimed to be her. Maybe. "I know you're there," the voice said. I took one step back, then another. And because panic makes people stupid, I said, "Mrs." I stopped before I used her name. A pause. Then the voice said again, slightly firmer, "Open the door." That was when the boy's warning came back to me. If you hear Mom outside, don't look through the peephole for too long. So naturally. I looked through the peephole. At first, she looked normal. Same coat, same face, same hair. A little pale maybe. A little too still. Then she smiled, and the smile was wrong. Not huge, not monstrous, just slow, careful. Like something performing a smile instead of feeling one. I jerked back from the door. Outside, she said, "Why are you afraid of me?" I didn't answer. Then I heard movement behind me and almost screamed. The girl was halfway down the stairs, barefoot, blanket around her shoulders. She looked at the door and said, "Don't open it." The little boy appeared at the top of the stairs a second later. He looked terrified, but not surprised. "She came early this time," he said. That line broke something in me. Not because it was loud, because it sounded practiced. "What do you mean?" I whispered. The girl kept staring at the door. "She's not allowed inside if Dad isn't here." Then the doorknob moved. Just once. A slow, gentle turn. Locked. I grabbed my phone and called the father. Voicemail. Called again. Nothing. The knocking stopped completely. The silence after it was worse. Then the baby monitor turned its sound back on by itself. Static burst into the room. Then breathing. Then a woman's voice, low and warped, coming through the speaker. "Let me in." I stared at the monitor. The little boy had started crying without making any sound. The girl took his hand. Then we heard a door open upstairs. Long, slow. Not one of the bedroom doors. The hallway bathroom. Both children looked toward the ceiling. Then the girl looked at me and said, "She came in the wrong way." The monitor hissed. Then another voice came through it, no longer trying to sound like the mother. "Upstairs." That was it. That was the moment I stopped trying to understand and started trying to survive. I grabbed both kids and backed into the kitchen. There was a back door there, glass, covered by curtains. Rule 3. Do not open the back curtains after 10 p.m. I reached for them anyway. The girl grabbed my wrist hard. "No." Her face had gone white. "If you open it, she'll know we can see her." I let go immediately. Above us, footsteps moved across the second floor. Slow, measured, not searching. Like whatever was upstairs already knew exactly where we were. I grabbed the flashlight from the junk drawer. No idea why. Maybe because holding something felt better than holding nothing. The footsteps stopped. Then the kitchen lights flickered once. And from somewhere near the staircase, the mother's voice said, Why are you hiding with them?" The girl whispered, "Don't answer." So I didn't. The voice came again, warmer this time, almost hurt. "I'm their mother." Then, from outside, another voice shouted, a man's voice, the father. "Open the door!" I stared toward the front hall. The mother was upstairs. The father was outside. That should not have been possible. Then he shouted again, louder. "Do not let her touch them!" I ran. I dragged the children to the front door, unlocked it. The father nearly stumbled inside. He looked awful, sweating, breathing hard, face drained of colour. He locked the door immediately and looked at the children first. Only after he saw both of them safe did he speak. "Where is she?" I pointed upward. He closed his eyes for 1 second. Then he said, "Take them to the car." I stared at him. "What is happening?" He grabbed the fireplace poker and pressed his keys into my hand. "She only gets stronger if we explain her." Then something laughed upstairs. Soft, female, very close. That was enough for me. I took the children and ran outside. The cold air hit like ice water. I shoved them into the back seat of his SUV and climbed in after them, locking the doors. The house looked normal from outside. Beautiful, still, safe. That was the worst part. Then a figure moved behind an upstairs window. Tall, female, watching. I remembered the father's warning and dropped my eyes instantly. A second later, the front door burst open and he came running out. He got behind the wheel and backed out fast enough to make the children lurch. For almost a full minute, nobody spoke. Then the little boy asked from the back seat, "Did she come from the bathroom again?" The father's hands tightened. "Yes." The girl looked at him. "Did Mom know?" He answered after a long silence. 12 years ago, before your brother was born, your mother almost died in that house." No one moved. "She was gone for 4 minutes," he said. "And when she came back, she wasn't alone." He drove as he explained. The upstairs hallway bathroom had a history long before they moved in. A worker died during construction. Then another man years later. Then one of the previous owners drowned in the tub. But according to him, the real problem began after the mother's near-death experience. After that, she started hearing herself in the house. Not just voices, imitations, calling from other rooms, speaking through devices, standing where she could not physically be standing. At first it stayed near the upstairs hall, then the bathroom, then the baby monitor when the children were younger. Over time, they made rules, not to stop it, just to survive it. I finally asked the question that had been burning in me from the start. "Why stay?" He laughed once, a dead sound, "Because it follows the family now." He drove us to a roadside motel 20 minutes away. We all went into one room. He locked every lock, closed every curtain, turned on every light. The children acted like this wasn't their first emergency. The girl climbed into one bed with her brother. I stood near the door, still holding that stupid flashlight. Then the father looked at me and said, "She liked you." That made me feel sick. What does that mean? It means she noticed you noticing her. I thought about the front door, the peephole, the monitor, the voice upstairs, and understood that whatever had been in that house was aware of me specifically, not because I was there, because I had paid attention, because I had tried to understand it. I asked him what she really was. He looked toward the motel bathroom before answering. "As far as I know, she is what came back wearing my wife's voice." None of us slept much. The children dozed near dawn. I sat in a chair by the window and watched the parking lot until sunrise. At 6:11, his phone rang. He answered, listened, hung up, then sat very still. I asked who it was. He said the police. Then he told me they had found his wife. My stomach dropped. Where? In the house. He swallowed. In the upstairs bathroom. No one in that room breathed for a second. Then he said the part that mattered. She'd been dead for hours. Before the knocking, before the voice on the porch, before the thing upstairs had spoken to us. I looked at the children, then at him, and said the one thing neither of us wanted to say aloud. Then what was outside the door? He didn't answer. He didn't need to. I left that morning. He paid me in cash. Too much cash. The kind of money people give when they want silence as much as gratitude. I took it. A week later, the house went up for sale. 2 months later, the listing disappeared. No photos, no sign, nothing. Like the house had decided it didn't want to be seen. I tried to move on. I really did. But some things kept happening. A baby monitor turning on in an apartment where no baby lived. A voicemail that contained only breathing. Waking at 1:03 with the absolute certainty that someone was standing outside my bedroom door. Once. Just once. I heard a knock at my apartment after midnight. Then a woman's voice said through the door, "It's me." I moved out 2 weeks later. Years passed. Then one night, I got a message online from an account with no profile picture. It was from the girl, or at least I think it was. There was only one sentence in it. She still uses your voice when she wants something. I stared at that message for a long time, then deleted the account, never replied. But some things do not stop just because you stop answering them. Sometimes, late at night, I still feel like I'm back in that living room. I still see the folded paper on the coffee table, still hear the soft knock at the door, still remember the impossible pressure of deciding whether to trust a voice that sounded exactly like someone's mother. And the thing that stays with me most is this. The rules were never meant to explain the house. They existed because explanation was useless. The rules were not answers. They were damage control. A survival map written by people who had already learned what happened when they tried logic against something that only wanted entry. That is what haunts me. Not just the smile at the peephole, not just the voice on the monitor, not just the bathroom at the end of the hallway. It is the idea that somewhere, in some quiet suburban house that looks completely safe from the outside, someone might be unfolding a sheet of paper like that right now, reading a rule that sounds impossible, laughing nervously, telling herself there has to be a normal explanation, hearing a child ask softly, "Did they tell you about the rules yet?" If that is happening, if some version of that house still exists, then I hope she listens better than I did. I hope she never checks the peephole twice. I hope she never answers a voice from behind the wrong door. And more than anything, I hope that if someone who sounds exactly like their mother knocks after 1 a.m., she remembers that some things do not need permission to sound human. They only need one person to believe them long enough to be invited in. Because that is the truth no one tells you about certain houses. The thing inside them is rarely trying to get out. Most of the time, it is trying to be let in. And if it learns your voice, or your habits, or the exact way you hesitate before opening a door, then the rules stop belonging only to that house. They start belonging to you. That is why I still sleep with a light on. That is why I never answer late night knocks. That is why I don't keep mirrors facing my bedroom door. And that is why, When people tell me I'm being irrational, I let them, because I know how harmless evil can look from the outside. I know it can wear a tired woman's voice. I know it can stand politely on a porch. I know it can wait inside a beautiful suburban house until everyone around it believes nothing is wrong. Then knock, softly, patiently, like family. And if you ever find yourself in a strange house with a list of rules waiting on the table, do yourself a favor. Don't laugh. Don't improvise. Don't assume you are smarter than the people who wrote them. Just follow the rules, especially the one that sounds impossible. Because in houses like that, the impossible one is usually the reason you're still alive by morning.